Alright, let's continue our adventure into Unity. So at this point, we got a character who's walking, collecting stuff. We got the collection added to our score. We got an enemy or obstacle that we run into and destroy. So let's add some more function. So first off, we're going to create a start screen. So this will appear as soon as you start up your game. And from there, we want to be able to press spacebar to start the game, or press I on the keyboard to toggle some instructions on and off. So to get started there, I'm going to go to my scene folder. And right now, make sure you're in your same scene. So I'm in my sample scene right now. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to create a scene. I'm going to call this start screen. And I'm going to go ahead and double click it to open it up. So I have a nice blank screen to start with. So from here, I'm going to create my start screen. So you could very easily, open a Photoshop file, build your start screen, add the text, add your title, all that, and then just import that and bring that in. But just for fun, I'm just going to go ahead and use some of my existing assets to go ahead and build a simple little scene that will be my start screen. Make this what you want it to be. So I'm just going to add some stuff. Maybe put my guy in here. I'll just leave him back there. And then I'm just going to right click and add a UI text. When I create a new text and it creates a canvas, when you have your canvas in the scene, it's always important to click on the canvas and set the render mode from screen space overlay to screen space camera, and then grab your camera from your hierarchy and drag it into this render camera slot. That way it matches the size of your canvas to your camera, and that's important to do right away, because now I can go ahead and grab my text assets and add some text. I'm just going to add some simple stuff in here. Press space to start and press I for instructions. So when kind of making this, there's really no rules here. You can, use whatever you need, make it whatever you want it to be. Notice mine is behind right now, so I'm going to press my canvas and go to its sorting layer and throw it on the frontmost layer. Alright, go back to my text. I want to make it bold, and let's center it. So there we go. We got some text going. So again, we're using a canvas and a text and my assets, but this could very easily just be a single image. So next thing we need to do is I'm actually going to import for my instructions. I created a quick image, so I'm just going to drag that in here. And I'm just going to also place that into my scene, resize it. Make sure you're selected on the right thing. We'll just scale it down and move it up, and I'll put it on the frontmost layer. We'll give it a higher number just because we want this to appear in front. And there we go. So we got our start screen, design set up, and then we got just some instructions placed in the scene. Don't worry that they're covering stuff right now. So next we need to add the functionality. So to do that, we're going to right click in the hierarchy and create an empty game object. And I'm going to call this start screen script. And all this object is doing is acting as a holder for our script to add the functionality. So I'm going to go to my scripts folder and I'm going to import a couple of scripts. So if you go into the drive, should have a variety of scripts to import. I'm going to go ahead and import my start screen script. I'm going to take my start screen script, let it think, and I'm going to drag that right onto my start screen script object. So now when I click my object, we'll see we have the start screen right here, and then we have a spot for the rules. Now what you plug in here is your image or construction or whatever of your instructions. So I just have an image, so I'm just gonna plug that into the rules. So this just tags this object as the rules so that it will toggle on and off when we press I. So before this will work, we have to do one more thing. So we created a new scene, and if we go ahead and look at our start screen script, we see what's going on here. So right now, we have a little bit of functionality here. When we press I, it's going to set the rules to be either active or inactive to toggle them on and off, just their visibility. But we also have here if input.getKey down is spacebar. So if we hit the spacebar, Scene Manager loads Scene 1. So we need to make sure we have Scene 1 properly targeted. So let's go have a look at that. So I'm going to go to File, Build Settings, and then at the top of our build settings we have Scenes in Build. So these are the current scenes. And right now we just have our sample scene, which is where we built the rest of the game. So if I go to my Scenes folder, and we have here our start screen scene, I'm just going to take that, I'm going to drag it into the Scenes in Build. So now we have our sample scene and our start screen. And if we look over here, we can see they're tagged as 0 and 1. So as is, we're basically telling it to load the start screen, but we want to load the sample scene, so we're just going to click on the sample scene, drag it below start screen so that it's tagged as scene 1 and our start screen is scene 0. So once you have it looking like that, X out, and we should be good to go. We got our start screen made, we got our instructions, we got our empty game object with our start screen script applied to it, and then our rules plugged into the rules slot. So let's see how it works. So I'm going to press play. Now I have my start screen, and when I press I, our instructions will appear and go away when I press I again. And let's see if when I press spacebar, it should load me in to our game, and then I can play our game. So that's setting up the start screen, which is just what we want. So now we're able to start the game. Now we want to add a little bit of functionality to let us end the game. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and save this scene. We're going to go back to our sample scene where we have our game built. And in here, we're going to create a goal. So to get started, I'm just going to create a empty game object, call this goal. Into this goal, I'm going to add a Physics 2D box collider. Just going to adjust the size of the box collider, make it bigger, make it taller. I'm going to put this at the end of my level. And then I actually might also, so we can visualize it a bit better, I'm going to go in my assets and grab my little particle here and make sure it's on the right sorting layer. Move it into place. And then I'm just gonna squish it, make it taller. Kind of looks like a portal. But now I got this little goal collider with a just something to represent where it is. So okay, so one more important thing to do, if I select my goal and go to my collider, we got to make sure it's set as a trigger. So once it's set as a trigger, we're good to go. So let's go back to our scripts folder, and we're going to grab the next script. This time we're going to need the restart level script. So let it load in, let it do its thing. And once it's good to go, we're going to select our goal, and we're going to apply the start screen script to it, or the restart level script to it. And we should have a couple of slots right here. We should have a spot for a particle and a spot for a player rigid. And we don't actually have to plug in the player rigid because it's going to search and find that automatically. So let's see here. So I'm going to plug in a particle. I'm going to go to my particle. I'm just going to duplicate this one. Oh, cancel. Duplicate it, and I'm just going to change the color just so we can see something different. Go back to my goal and plug in my new particle. And then let's press play. So you know it's working if, see, once I press play, this player rigid populates. Because what's happening, if we look briefly at the code, let's let this open to close the accident. What it's doing is it's defining the player rigid as the player component rigid body, and it's finding the player by looking for something in the scene tagged as a player. So if we go back to our player character and up to the tag, we see it's tagged as a player. So if you don't have anything showing up in the goal in this slot, that might be because your player character is not tagged as a player. But now, with that set up, what should happen is when we run into our goal, we should spawn a particle, instantiate a particle, and then it will as well freeze us in place. Then it's going to wait 5 seconds, and then it'll load our start screen again. So let's see if that works. So we got our particle. I can't move right now. And there we go. We're back at our start screen. And then we're in our start screen, so I can look at the instructions, or I can press space to start. And then I'm back at it again. So there we go. So now, you know, with just that added in, we have a really, really simple gameplay loop. We can start the game, we can end the game, and then we can restart again. So one quick thing we're going to do now is we're going to open our player controller. And we should have done this right at the beginning, but I forgot. Is we're going to switch in our player controller. We have our void start, and then right below that we have our void fixed update. We're going to change it from a void fixed update to just a void update. And we're going to save. And this should fix our jumping problem. So before, when we press jump, it didn't always jump. Now, when we press play, it should, you know, jump when I jump. And then, as well, this should fix the shoot to shoot every time we shoot. So now you can go in and you can adjust your, adjust your movement and your firing parameters to kind of line up. So there we go. Now we got a goal. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do, after we got our goal, is we want to add a bit more functionality to our enemy, as well as give ourselves like a health bar to work with. So I'm in my main scene, and first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our canvas, right click on it, and we're going to add a slider. So then we can hit the drop down on the slider, and then it shows us all the different components that make it up. We're just going to go to this handle slide area and just delete that. We don't need that for this example. Then I'll select the slider, go over to the inspector to see its parameters, and we're going to change a couple things. First thing, I'm going to come down near the bottom and change the maximum value to 10. And then I'm going to change the value, so the current value it's set to, also to 10. And you can see our little slider here updated. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select back in the hierarchy, select the background asset. This will let me change the color. I'm just going to adjust it slightly. And then I can select the fill area, or hit the little drop down, then select the fill, and I can change this as well. I'll just change it to red. Cool. Now, if you want to get rid of this little gap here, just select the background piece, and you can just drag it in. Or highlight. Select it here, and then you can like scale it in place. So you can either like scale down one of them or scale up the other one. There you go. Now they match. So then go ahead and select your full slider piece, and you can move it where you want. So one thing we didn't do before is if you look at my game window here, when I click and drag this and change its size, our text doesn't or our UI doesn't change with the size of the screen. It kind of just stays in one spot. And we want it to change. So that's an easy fix. We're going to just select on our canvas, go to the canvas scaler settings right in the middle here, and change it from constant pixel size to scale with screen size. So once we do that, now when we change the size of our screen, it'll scale our UI with it, which is perfect. Alright, so now in our scene we should have a slider. We should have our text. This is our counter from earlier. You can, place it wherever. And we have our slider, of course, and cool. So let's go grab our next script. So this will be the day 5, I believe, and it's the player health script. So I'm going to drag that in. So this one will take a little extra setup. So to get started with it, we created that. Okay. So we're going to take this player health script and we're going to attach it directly to the slider asset. So I have my slider right here. I got my player health script. I'm going to drag it in onto the slider. It should appear over here. So again, we have a particle slot. I'm just going to grab another particle to plug in there. So this one will play on death. So, just keep that in mind as you create a new one. This one, I'm going to change it. We'll just make it red. So why not? Go back to my slider and I'll plug the particle in. Great. Next thing we need to do is adjust our player controller. But first, let's actually go to our scripts and let's have a peek at the player health script. So this one's referencing some UI stuff, so it can talk to the UI. And you can see we have a new variable called health, our public particle, then a private game object. So what this script is doing is it's basically setting the value of our slider here. So it's going to the player, it's looking for the player, and it's looking for its health value. And, as we remove health from this value, once it gets to 0, we die. And then we start another coroutine, which instantiates a particle, sets the player to inactive, so we can't do anything, wait 5 seconds, then we load the start screen again. So this lets us, adjust the value of the slider. So that's that, but one thing we need to do still is, let's open our player controller. So we need to add a little bit to this. So hopefully at this stage, your player controller should look about like this. We had cleaned it up a bit, but we don't got to add much. So I'm looking in the little document we have here, and we'll just put them side by side. First thing I'm going to do is grab this new variable. This is the health value. So this is what's added to our total every time. So we're going to take 1 away every time we're hit. We're going to add it to the bottom of our variable list. So just copy, paste, boom. Next, we have a new if statement. So I'm just going to copy this. And it says to add it at the end of our void on collision enter 2D between the last 2 brackets. So I'm going to come down here. We got our void start, void update, void on collision enter 2D. And then here's our last 2 brackets. I'm going to go right in between them and paste. So now, I'm just going to add an extra space just so we can see a little better. So now we have, when we do a collision, right now we have this one that was here, which will, so if when we hit something tagged as an enemy, we will destroy the game object. And if we hit something tagged as enemy danger, we will change we will add our health to our health value. So when we get hit by something with enemy danger, we lose a health. So that's that. So let's save this. And now a little more we have to do. Let's go back to Unity. So right now, nothing's really going to happen because we have nothing tagged as enemy danger. So if I select my little enemy guy here, let's see. Let's find him. There he is. Enemy. We're going to come over here, and right now he's tagged as an enemy. So we got to start thinking, do we want this whole character to be tagged as an enemy, or do we just want a new component on it to tag as enemy danger? The way I was thinking about it was, right now we still have the functionality where we can run into him and run into him to destroy it. But if we want to give him like a weapon or something, say he has a sword, we can, on our little enemy prefab here, we can add a empty parented underneath it, call it weapon hitbox or something. And then to this empty game object, let's add a new component. We'll add a box collider. I'm just going to reposition it to his hand. I don't know, maybe he punched me. Not very nice. Oh. So you can see now this guy is made up of a collider and another collider that is his hitbox, because now on this new weapon hitbox down here, we have a new kind of game object that's untagged, and now we can go ahead, we can add a new tag, press the plus, called enemy danger, and make sure it's spelled exactly like this. It's case sensitive as well, so enemy danger, no spaces, capital E, capital D. Save it. Now we have an enemy with one part that's labeled as an enemy, so we can run into it and destroy it, and then another portion that's tagged as a enemy danger that will damage us. So if everything is all set, now when we press play, we should be able to, if we look at our health bar up here, we should be able to collect our things, they add to our score, and we know there's a hitbox right here, so when I hit it, our health goes down. So if I keep hitting it, my health will gradually go down, and then when I reach 0, I explode. And then it waits 5 seconds, and we're back to the beginning. So here's a this is a point where you can really get in and start to get creative with how you design your enemy. So you can you can have them composed of multiple game objects, and then have each game object have different functionality. But so that's the next point to get to. If you're following, we're going to go over this specific portion in the next class. So until then, as long as we have our slider ready to go, it's just a matter of plugging in those last few things. Otherwise, that's about how far we got in class today, so we'll go on from there. We're just about done now, is the thing. So the next kind of thing we'll be doing is working through any last final things, and then looking at building out the game.